once we recognized that the real power of this was to help people understand and improve their own minds, the penny just kind of dropped. The light bulb illuminated, set fire. And we recognized that if we could teach people to meditate more effectively by using this, then we could solve a massive problem for people who know that meditation is good for them, but never actually start the practice because it's hard to know what's going on in your mind, and it's hard to really know if you're doing it right. And with Muse, we could make that simple and, transparent and based on science.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships podcast. I am Sophie Jaffe, and Adi is feeling a bit under the weather and doesn't really have a voice, so cannot record with me. I'm going to hit up this intro on my own, and I'm so excited because I have a treat for you guys. But first, let's start out by doing our review. So this is from Friday, and it says soulful, intentional, and educational. My favorite podcast. And then it's by Shelby Million. So Shelby, let us know your address by DM or email, and we will get you out a little care package. The review says, I started listening to Ignited at the beginning of the year and look forward to every single episode. Sophie and Adi have been expanders for my relationship and speak honestly and authentically about their personal experience in partnership as individuals and spirituality. They are incredibly complimentary and provide a refreshingly honest dialogue around partnership and the real struggles and triumphs that come with it. An excellent combination of science, modern spirituality, authenticity, and what matters most, relationships with others and your own self. Thank you, Sophie and Adi, for your beautiful story and inspiring me to continue to do the work and continuing to grow into my highest self, sending love and light. I have goosebumps. Thank you, Shelby, for that amazing review. So beautiful. Well, thank you guys. Remember, just any review that you leave that we read on air, wherever you listen to podcasts, but really we always pick it from iTunes. So if you go to iTunes and leave us a review and we read it on air, then we send you a special package with some Ignited gear, a mug, a hat, philosophy superfoods of your choice. We just hook it up and send you a little package of love and gratitude. So thank you for that. So today, instead of doing my normal quote grabbing, I'm going to be reading a passage. It's a book by one of my favorite authors and artists. It's Dallas Clayton. I don't know if you know his work. So this is a kid's book for adults, and it's called It's Never Too Late. So I'm going to have a little story time with you guys. All right. If today was the day that it all came crashing with thunderclaps and lightning flashing, how would you feel? Where would you stand? Who would you want to hold your hand? What would you care of bills and debt or opinions of people you'd never met? What would you think of the laundry pile or the kitchen sink or the bathroom tile? What would you do with those final hours? Would you lie in the grass? Would you smell the flowers? Would you wear a dress? Would you sing a song? Would you make a mess? Would you right a wrong? Would you set your alarm or straighten your bed, or hug your cat and dog instead? Would you scream and yell or laugh and cry? Would you call your friends to say goodbye? And what if today just kept on going, and day after day there was no way of knowing when it would end or how it would be? Would you still live each hour like a bird in a tree? Because the truth is that nobody knows what to say when the air gets cold and the sky turns gray. And the truth is that nobody has all the answers, and everyone's singers and everyone's dancers. And everyone's sink gets all full of dishes, and everyone's heart gets all full of wishes. And everyone's mind gets all full of mess, and we all read the signs, and we all try our best. But it's never too late to say that you care, to call up a friend you wish was still there. And it's never too late to start something new, to do all those things you've been longing to do. Because this is your life, this moment right now. As you read this, the world is just spinning around. And each moment is a moment that's ticking away. So what will you do and what will you say? And what will you be and what will you give and what will you make of those moments you live? Because you could be anything and you could be all, and you could be out there just having a ball, and you could be failing and trying again, and you could be changing the way it'll end. And you could be bigger and you could be better, and you could mend hearts just by writing a letter, just by telling a story or sharing a smile or sitting and talking and laughing a while. And all the traffic and all the bills and all the pressure and all the ills. Well, those will keep coming. Of this I am certain. But in those last moments, when you pull back the curtain, it's the love you'll remember that you gave and you got, and the times you were certain and the times you were not. And the times you were open and the times that you had when you felt like a child or you hugged like a dad. Or you smelled like a mom or you cried like forever. Those are the moments you're going to remember. So go and collect them, create them and share. Find them and pull them right out of the air and shape them and give them to others who care. Because it's never too late to begin. And today is the day the world might end. And today is the day the world might start. So live it and love it with all of your heart. So that is a book that I read all the time. I give it to friends all the time. Again, it's Never Too Late by Dallas Clayton. And he's a great author. He lives in LA and just has the most beautiful illustrations. They're really childlike and beautiful. So I wanted to read that. I was just called to read that to you guys. I found it when going through some old boxes in the kids' playroom, and it always gets stuck with the kids' books, but it's not a kids' book. It's for grown-ups. So I hope that that helps you on your way, and I hope that it resonates, and it's something you can come back to now anytime. You can just bookmark this and come back and listen when you need a little reminder. Today we have the lovely Ariel Garten on. She has this amazing technology, breakthrough technology called Muse, which is all about really sensing the brain through a headband. It's the most incredible technology, and I can't wait for you to hear all about her mission. She loves to support women to be kickass in business. She's supporting so many women, and she's also at the cutting edge of neuroscience and really contributes to that. So you hear she and Adi talk about that, and really getting into that which is mindfulness, meditation, and really this theme of the month, which is mental well-being. And, you know, all of these things play a part in mental well-being, from reading inspiring stories like I just read you, to reminding yourself with quotes, to journaling, to asking for help, to seeing a therapist. These are all so important and vital aspects. Having healthy relationships in your life, that really always resonates for me. And it's one of the biggest things for me in mental well-being is having relationships in my life with people who really step up and walk the walk, that do the work, that go to therapy, that, you know, do healing sessions and try crazy things to heal themselves from traumas that may, or experiences that may hold them back from being the best versions of who they are. And being around people that are low vibration, you feel immediately. And it's not something that you have to continue to do. And that's part of mental well-being. So without further ado, here is our interview with Ariel. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixed all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our conversation, I always call this the fireside chat. We're nowhere near the fire.
Hangout.
Our hangout. I like that. The hangout portion of today's podcast. I love today's topic. First of all, because it's something we've never talked about on the podcast before. Secondly, because I'm such a huge fan of technology and specifically of neurofeedback. So I'm going to do a really tiny intro, and then I'm going to let our guest today introduce herself and her path to getting to this moment. But we used to use neurofeedback a lot at Alternatives, a treatment center that I had. It was one of my favorite techniques to use with people. A lot of reasons that we'll probably get into today. The problem was always you need a specialist. You need to go to a place. You need to go sit down with somebody. It's not that cheap. And, now all the inconvenient stuff that normally comes up would happen. You got to make it to an office. You got to make appointments. If people have to be at the office, you got to pay hundreds of dollars a month, all this stuff. But it was also effective. So we would always talk about how to make this something that was easily accessible to people. Muse, the company, was just starting. Like we just heard about this company that created a headband that would do, at the time, pretty rudimentary, but still amazingly accessible and easy to take advantage of biofeedback. Times have changed. It's been 7 years since, and we are really, really lucky to have Ariel, the founder of Muse, on Ignited today to talk all things neurofeedback, all things brain, all things ignited and life improvement. So welcome, Ariel.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And I like the idea of having a fireside chat. And from that, the sparks in our fireside chat to ignite all the flames in people's imaginations and the potential in their lives.
I love it. I think that's what we're going to do here today. We got to hear this story, right? So how do you end up, what's the path you took to end up founding a technology neuro-hacking company?
So the path was not a straight one. I'm 40 years old now. The path started long ago. I was always interested both in art and science. In high school, I even had a job in a research lab doing very early embryonic stem cell research. I was just a junior assistant in the lab. And at the same time, I had a clothing design company. So I've always been fascinated by understanding the world through art and expression, as well as through science and technicality. I then became really interested in the brain, went to school for neuroscience, and started working in the lab of Dr. Steve Mann. So Professor Steve Mann is actually one of the inventors of the wearable computer. He's the guy that literally made Google Glass before Google did. And he and his master's student, Chris Amony, and another student, James Fung, they had this amazing brain-computer interface system. So it was an EEG electrode that you'd slip on the back of your head. And by shifting your brain state, focusing or relaxing, we could change the sounds that you would hear, or we could change the lighting in the environment. And I stood back from there and said, oh my God, this is incredible. We are literally interacting with the world with our minds, and the world needs to know about this. So I got together with my co-founders, Chris and Trevor Coleman, and the three of us started to found this amazing company. Along the way, I also needed a real job. So I trained as a psychotherapist, and I had a private practice. And we were on the side building this technology, trying to figure out what the best use of it was. And we did all sorts of crazy things like, thought controlled lighting installations. We did a massive project at the Olympics where people can control a big building, like the lights on the CN Tower, with their brain from across the country. And ultimately recognized that the value that this technology had was not in controlling other technology. It was actually in learning to control our own minds. And that as we were teaching people to focus and relax so they could try to make a light bulb go brighter, we were actually giving people neurofeedback. We were showing them what was going on in their mind. We were showing them what it was like to focus and that it could have an outcome, what could happen if they relaxed and learned to understand these states. And then we were showing them real data from their brain, graphs and charts that showed them what they were doing. And so once we recognized that the real power of this was to help people understand and improve their own minds, the penny just kind of dropped. The light bulb illuminated, set fire. And we recognized that if we could teach people to meditate more effectively by using this, then we could solve a massive problem for people who know that meditation is good for them, but never actually start the practice because it's hard to know what's going on in your mind and it's hard to really know if you're doing it right. And with Muse, we could make that simple and, transparent and based on science.
I love it. For so many reasons, if not just the fact that you went from helping people create sounds through their ways, right? You had like this instrument that that people could play just using their EEG.
Yeah, we had all sorts of fun audio experiences. So we would do concerts where we'd have 48 people at a time in the audience, and the musicians would hook up their synthesized instruments to our system. And by the audience changing their brain state, it would change the character of different aspects of the musician's output. So it could change the volume or the pitch or the envelope. That was just one school of exploration. We did tons of fun stuff with it, and ultimately ended up with the product and market that is in some ways, the product of those early explorations in the brain and sound.
Yeah. It's so cool to get from so far outside ourselves, controlling lighting in a building, controlling things like that, controlling sounds and musicians on a stage, to, something that on its face can sound so simple, right? Helping people meditate better. I think most people, when they have an idea of meditation, it's that Buddhist monk in a temple, cross-legged, wearing this sort of really, really simple clothing and just being isolated. The idea of incorporating technology into meditation is pretty recent. And yeah, I know in my work, so you're really into mindfulness and meditation. I know a lot of people really struggle with meditation.
Yeah. And I was actually a psychotherapist at the time, and I was teaching people to meditate. And I myself had a terrible meditation practice. I'd learned how to do it. I learned how to teach it. And I would sit down to try to meditate. My brain would go all over the place. I kind of almost didn't want to shut it off because I was an entrepreneur. I was a therapist. I was doing all of these things, and I thought I needed all of these thoughts. And it wasn't until we started actually really building Muse that I started using it. And then I had the aha moment of, oh, this is what meditation is. Okay. This is what it feels like to stay in that focus. Now I get it. And, from there, 2,000 years of history opened up to me, and all the things that I'd read for years finally made sense. It's like, oh, this is it.
Yep. I had the exact same experience with meditation, with so many things, with personal training, with just different things in my life, nutrition. You just have that aha moment and you can't force it. And it has to be through experience. And it's funny when you just explained in the beginning about the light bulb, there's something you just said that clicked for me, and I all of a sudden understood neuroscience. Neurofeedback. There was something you said in the light bulb when I was like, because even as you are talking, most of our listeners have no idea what you're talking about. And I think you two have been in this field for long enough that you don't realize how even what you're saying is really complicated, even as you're trying to explain it pretty simply.
Well, let's get into it.
Let's break it down.
That's a really great
right
point.
up.
Right. I've put electrodes on people's heads using old school sort of paste and very basic, EEG software.
I think explain even that. So what I remember walking into a few sessions, even when you had it on the go, you came to Equinox, the gym one time, and you did an event, and you guys had like 2 or 3 laptops set up. Like this was the most like versatile on the go version of neurofeedback, right? So he had like 2 or 3 laptops, a bunch of electrodes, sticky stuff, gummy stuff that sticks to your hair, which is honestly the main reason
Totally
I don't
gross.
ever. This is why I never wanted to do it, is because I didn't want to have to blow out my hair again. And it sounds so ridiculous, but it's true. Like I wash my hair once a week. Like I can't do neurofeedback 3 times a week. And once a week, does that really count? I mean, once a week working out doesn't count. So does once a week neurofeedback count? So
No.
there's all this stuff, and it creates barriers when there's all these things. So yeah, I witnessed you doing this at a pop-up at Equinox, and the laptops were out, and the gel and the stuff that you stick to your head, to the clients' heads, and it all seemed very technical and complicated, and I wanted to understand, but I didn't. And so what you're saying is that you encapsulated all of that into a
headband, into basically a thing that's like a Fitbit on your forehead, or like a sweatband, but you don't have to sweat.
Yeah.
So let's
with no gel,
Sophie,
no
and let's
goop,
have
no
you
nothing.
explain to Sophie the concept behind biofeedback and neurofeedback, and then what you guys were able to do with Muse and now the app and all the other adjoining components.
Sure. So the concept behind neurofeedback and biofeedback is that our bodies can intuitively learn when you tell them that they're doing the right thing. So if you want to train a puppy, you have it do a behavior and then you give it a reward. And it liked the reward, so it wants to do that behavior again. And you can do that with your body or your mind to teach it a range of different things. So in biofeedback, the common examples are teaching your body to calm. So you might be looking at a screen and it goes fuzzy when you get anxious and it gets clear when you get calm. And so you obviously want to spend as much time as you can in calm so the screen is clear and you can watch your program. In neurofeedback, you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it with your brain. And neurofeedback uses brainwaves as the method of giving feedback and understanding where your brain is at. So brainwaves are the electrical communication that goes on in your head. It's the sum total of all your little neurons firing together, and it can be read predictably from the front of the head. And there are different brainwaves associated with focus, with relaxation, with meditation, with cogitation. And so during neurofeedback, you put an electrode on somebody's head, which is reading their brainwave activity, and it can determine what state they're in. And if the person is, for example, agitated or anxious and you want them to be calm, then you'll do an exercise where the calm brainwave state is reinforced. So every time somebody comes into a calm alpha wave state, they'll see something pleasing on the screen. And their brain will intuitively learn that that was rewarding. So you want to return to that place on the screen. And you have 2 modes of learning that happen in neurofeedback. One is intuitive. Your neurons are just reinforced when they're in that state. You don't even need a conscious human in the loop. It's just like, okay, and that state is good, go there again. That state is good, go there again. Then there is the conscious part of it where you can observe, you're seeing and you're getting feedback. And you can say, hey, when I go into this state, I can now see something good happening. So that makes the subtle things that happen in our bodies and minds that we tend to not notice during the day much more obvious to us. So if every time you're relaxed, the screen gets really pretty, you become very aware of noticing your relaxation. You become very aware of the things that make you relaxed. You become very aware of wanting to be in that relaxed state. Your attention goes towards the act of relaxation. So your conscious mind is now made aware of the state. The state is made appealing to your conscious mind, and you put more attention there. So those are the basis behind neuron biofeedback. What we do with Muse is we give you neurofeedback and biofeedback specifically to help you meditate. And so we have an algorithm that knows when your brainwaves are in focused attention versus when your mind is wandering. And we have an audio landscape that gives you feedback to know when you're focused and make that focus state really rewarding. And then to let you know when your mind is wandering, And that becomes your cue, both intuitively and consciously, to go like, oh, my mind is wandering. There's a thought. I don't need to be there. Let me come back to this rewarding state of focused attention, this meditation state. And uses a super simple little device. It literally is like a Fitbit for your mind. And it very easily gives you this real-time feedback in a really kind of beautiful transformational audio landscape that you really hear as your mind. So the experience is you are listening to your mind when it wanders and when it returns. And then you get data, charts, graphs, and scores, things that show you what happens during your meditation process and keeps you moving forward session after session.
Wow. That sounds incredible.
Yeah. And the beauty of biofeedback, and early biofeedback was really simple. Like, what is your body temperature, right? And so the idea was when you get stressed out, your body temperature elevates, and people would just look at a meter saying, oh, your body temperature is going up. Focus on getting it to go down. The indirect way of doing that is by relaxing. And so people would relax. And so one of the things Sophie was talking about before was actually M-Wave HRV training, heart rate variability training, which is that one with the clip on the ear kind of thing. Pretty simple, pretty rudimentary, but very broad. And the idea, I think the reason why it took was because it was simple. I'd love to dig a little bit more deeply for our listeners who are really intrigued now, but kind of, oh, wait, you're telling me my brain can learn what it's doing. Muse focuses on the prefrontal cortex.
Prefrontal and temporal. So there are 4 electrodes, 2 on your forehead and 2 actually behind your ears. And so those rubber things behind your ears are actual reading electrodes.
Got it. So that's how you can compare prefrontal and temporal activation and do a more broad sort of evaluation of what's going on. That's great. And what I'd love, again, I love getting people real knowledge. So our brain works in frequencies, right? Delta, theta, alpha, beta, and kind of fast beta. And so do you mind walking people a little bit through the understanding? I think most people don't know any of this about their own brain. Yeah. And so I feel like, there's that concept in mindfulness and meditation of being the observer of your thoughts. And the moment you can observe them, it gives you a little bit of distance to now have some measure of control instead of just being engulfed by them. Mm-hmm. I think the same thing happens to people once they learn about how their brain functions. Mm. Oh, you're telling me alpha is this kind of relaxed, intermediate state. I understand that. I've been there. I know what that feels like. Oh, beta. So do you mind walking people through what it is that you guys train in Muse, what it is that you focus on, and walking people through that knowledge?
Totally happy to. So as you mentioned, so starting way back, our neurons communicate electrochemically. So you have little neurons inside your head and they're sending signals back and forth to one another. And those signals, when you sum them across all of the neuronal chatter, you can actually read from the surface of your head. And those are your brain waves. And our brains actually are very coordinated systems that work in kind of large groups. And so you're able to see coordinated amounts of firing at different parts of the head, which means that you can have different brainwave frequencies at different parts of your head. So if you close your eyes, for example, something called the alpha block happens. So your occipital lobe in the back of your head, that's where you do your visual processing. When you close your eyes, it goes into this very kind of coordinated alpha rhythm. Alpha is like this nice slow sine wave that's at 12 to 14 hertz. So when you close your eyes, all of the neurons back there that are, having a complex communication with one another as they're trying to process the visual world, as soon as you shut down that complex communication to them, they all sync together really beautifully. And so you're able to read this strong alpha wave that comes from the back of the head when your eyes are closed. It's just one example of how your brain kind of coordinates or syncs to create the symphony of your brain waves. So kind of going from the top down, you have gamma activity, which is the highest. And gamma has in some cases actually been associated with consciousness in other states. Down below, you have beta. Beta is a cogitation or a processing. So if you're actively processing, thinking, or having ideas, you can be in beta. Beta is also associated with anxiety. Moving down, you have alpha, and alpha is a very calm brain state to be in. Before you fall asleep, you're in alpha waves. And alpha waves are both associated with calm and with focus. So alpha waves are particularly associated with an internal sensory processing. So you're not processing the outside world, you're looking inward, you're calm, and you're focused often on a single point. Dropping down, you have theta state. Now, not all brain waves are the same thing at the same time. So, in general, theta state has been looked at as like a dream state or a creative state. When you're in sleep, you have an increase in theta waves. Children with ADHD often have an increase in theta waves, meaning that they're unfocused relative to beta, which is a cogitation. But if you look at theta specifically coming from the area between your eyes here called the frontal midline theta, that's actually a marker of focus. So older adults, for example, as they age, tend to decrease their frontal midline theta, which leads to a decrease in focus. And you want to be able to actually work that frontal midline theta to improve your focus. As you fall asleep, you have an increase in delta waves, and immediately upon sleep, you have actually a huge spike in delta waves as your alpha waves fall out. And then when you're in deep sleep, you can have slow cortical potentials, which are an even slower, like a very slow brain state. So there's a quick EEG primer. When we look at meditation specifically, at Muse, we study focused attention meditation, which is one of the simplest forms of meditation. It's often the one that people learn first and then, use throughout their whole life. So in a focused attention meditation, you're focusing on one point, which is often your breath. When your mind wanders, it is then your task to notice your wandering mind and choose, instead of following your wandering mind, to return back to your breath. So what we were able to do is to create an algorithm specifically for focused attention. We looked at the brains of first hundreds of people during meditation, both experts, like literally sitting on top of mountaintops in California with expert meditators covered in EEG, watching what was going on in their brain and having them, mark moment by moment the state that they had been in previously. We've used it with novices, and now we've looked at millions and millions of sessions of EEG meditation data. And what we've discovered is, meditation is not one thing. Meditation is not simply an increase in alpha. And meditation looks a little different depending on where in the brain you're looking. But overall, some of the trends that you see are an increase in alpha activity and alpha power, the amount of alpha that you have at that point, the amount of peak alpha. You have a change in theta activity. You see some coherence in theta activity. So coherence meaning theta and different parts of the brain work together. And then a few other characteristics that we've been able to see, again, looking at, millions of sessions of meditation. And so from there, we can know when you're in the state of focused attention versus when your mind has begun to wander off onto a thought. And so we create this audio landscape, and the metaphor we use is your mind is like the weather. So when you're thinking or distracted, you actually hear it as stormy or windy or wavy. And as you bring yourself back to clear focused attention, you quiet that storm.
I love it.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
No problem.
Look, the beautiful thing about biofeedback is it's like literal exercise for your brain, which it's hard to do without the feedback. It's hard to do without something showing. Like when you go lift a weight, if the weight is moving. When you go to meditate, you don't know. And I think that's why so many people freak out around, because you don't get the result right away. And you never get the result right away from anything. When you want to exercise and you go jogging, it doesn't feel good the first time. Your body's not good at running the first time you go running. And so I think what's missing from the brain is this level of understanding, the idea that, I'm training my brain to even recognize alpha and know when it's an alpha, so that I even know that my meditation is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Right. And I think also just starting small is always, just like with anything, you're not going to go out and run 4 miles the first time you lace up your shoes in a couple of years or ever. You're going to, run for 2 minutes, walk for 3, run for 1 minute, walk for 4, and build your way up. And the same thing with meditation. There's no shame in just sitting for 2 minutes and doing the best you can for that 2 minutes and acknowledging, like, again, as we've said many times in previous episodes, there is no perfect meditation practice. We've talked to the biggest meditation experts in the world, and it looks different every time. And it's just about sitting with yourself and taking the time and building up that muscle, like to be able to sit still and to be able to notice when you have a thought. And I think that makes it a lot more approachable and a lot more attainable and a lot more fun than feeling more like you're just failing every time you go to do it.
Yeah. So for us, it's really key that if you don't know how to meditate or you're frustrated by it, just start small. You can literally do it for 2 minutes. We have people who do 1 minute sessions, then up to 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 8 minutes. And, if 10 minutes is all you can get to, that's totally fine. We have lots of studies that show very interesting benefits from just 10 minutes a day. And when you do it, non-judgment is the key. And ultimately, what you recognize is what you're learning to do is to sit with discomfort and be okay with it. And I know that sounds really unappealing, but once you recognize and master that lesson, it is massive. So, you're sitting there meditating, your brain is bouncing all over the place. And the first thing you do is think, oh my God, what's going on? But the skill that you're building in that moment is being okay with what's happening. Just observing what's happening, accepting what's happening, not getting an emotional rise out of yourself, and not following that emotional rise to take yourself out of the thing that you actually should be doing, which is the meditation. And, once you get comfortable with that, 2 minutes in, you might feel like, okay, I really want to get up. This is boring. And at that moment, what you're learning is the ability to sit through something that temporarily feels not the most comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. The sensation of wanting to get up will rise. And if you don't actually take its invitation and you say, actually, no, I want to sit here and do what's good for me, then the feeling passes and then you keep going.
I feel like yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just like in the gym. I mean, you do the first push-up or the 7th push-up and it hurts. And if you were somebody who got up as soon as it slightly hurt, you would just never move forward. And so the skill that we're really learning with meditation is to manage the urges that come up in your body, to observe them, and then make different or better choices about them. And that makes you a stronger person in every part of your life. That makes you able to manage your procrastination because it's just an urge to go do something else. And you can be like, no, actually, I know how to manage these urges. Like the sensation of distraction comes up. I choose not to follow it. I come back to the thing in front of me. The urge to eat something bad comes up. Actually, it's okay. I've practiced a lot sitting on my mat, how I manage my urges. They come up. I feel them as a sensation. I acknowledge them and I move my attention elsewhere. And it is like the most fundamental skill for success.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just teaching my kid, my oldest Kai, that around exercise this morning because he wakes up really early in the morning. So he'll come with me to the little home gym that we have and exercise. And the moment it got hard, he wanted to get up. And I'm like, no. This is exactly the moment where you have to push. That next one that you do is the entire reason why you did the 7 before. The 7 repetitions before didn't mean much to your body. This one that is really, really hard and you're barely able to get through, that's exactly the thing that's going to serve the purpose.
Yes.
It's strength, but it's also resiliency.
Yeah.
I think like it's both. It's not more of one or more of the other. It's just like, it's a bunch of things. It's a bunch of life skills, which I think is so cool. Meditation teaches us how to behave in the world and not to be so reactive and not to be so impulsive, and instead take time and take a moment to just sit in it. And our culture is so quick to just shift and change the minute things get uncomfortable. Like, oh, we're fighting, let's break up. Oh, that doesn't feel good, let's get rid of it. Oh, I don't like this thing, I'm going to go home early. Like we just steer in the direction of comfort and and we are kind of like an ADD culture in a way, in that we're just like, boring, moving on, boring, you suck, and that's an exhausting place to be, to not be able to just sit through it.
Yeah. One of my favorite phrases is that the ability to sit with discomfort probably predicts your success in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. And the phrase, it doesn't sound very exciting or sexy. It's like, why would I want to sit with discomfort? But the truth is that most of the time we just run away from our emotions. So we never end up having real experiences because we don't want to feel something. Take like a networking context. You're at a party and there is somebody there that if you spoke to them could potentially move your career forward. But you go up to speak to them. What do you feel? Kind of nervous and anxiety. You start to feel a little uncomfortable. So what do? You recede back to your friends, back to the place of comfort, and you just don't go for it. Whereas had you just gone up to them, people are nice. They would have been welcoming. They would have shaken your hand and heard what you had to say and could move you forward. But we don't get over the barrier of fear because the sensation of fear is uncomfortable. And we're like, oh, we don't like that feeling. We're just going to run away from it. But if you push through to the other side, on the other side of fear is always freedom.
Yes.
I was just having this conversation with a client, and this morning. And the funny thing is, it's not just around fear. It's around almost any emotion that you have. The ability to observe it, know that it's just an experience and it's not the totality of your life in that moment. Which is, I think, when you're engulfed by your emotions, that's what happens. This morning, I was drawing the curtain, I think, in Noah's room. And those curtain rods that you have to tighten with the screws on the sides? You know what I'm talking about?
The pressure fit ones, yeah.
Yeah, so one of them must have been a little loose and the thing was moving. And I went to tighten it and I got frustrated for a split second. I was like, oh my God, this thing, it will never stay. Every 5 days, let's say, I have to readjust it. And then I remember just thinking about that thought and going, everything in life has to be readjusted.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes every day, sometimes every 5 minutes, sometimes every week or every month. But I haven't found anything in life yet that takes zero maintenance.
There's no maintenance.
And just works all the time. And so it's
except
really
for marriage, of course, that takes zero maintenance and works all the
Marriage,
time. So you guys can
course.
attest.
Oh.
Yeah.
Especially our marriage. It's been amazing. Since the first moment
bond.
we haven't fought. It's been crazy. But this happens. It happens with dishes. It happens with taking a bath. It happens with doing the laundry. It happens feeding your kids. Life is this constant revolving. It's not a single cycle. It's like these thousands of different cycles that are going on in your life all the time. And to be able to sit there for 5 minutes and actually observe your own cycle in your own heads around thoughts, as you guys just mentioned, gives you this insight into the entire experience of life.
It's just so interesting. Like when you really break it down, like he said, like this is going to happen every 5 days. You're going to get frustrated every 5 days about the exact same things, or you can change your thought. You're not going to change the thing. So what do you have control over? You can control your thought. And that goes for every single thing. Like I sat down, Nadie was frustrated because I walked in at 1:00 when our podcast was, and he's a very like wound up type A person. And which is
why you guys never fight in your marriage.
And he's had, he's had back-to-back things. And so he doesn't give himself space. So because he doesn't give himself space now, because I walked in, by the way, 1:00 is on time if that's when the podcast is. But in his mind, but you should be here earlier because then we have time. Like no one told me to be there at 12:55 or I would have been. I'm making myself lunch. And so it's like this funny thing where like he then is frustrated and like living in frustration. I'm just like enjoying my life over here. He's destroying himself. And I've realized that over the last few years, especially, the only person that's being, punished by my anger is me.
Mm-hmm.
So me being frustrated with him because he didn't do the dishes last night or he didn't X, Y, and Z, he doesn't remember that the next day. He doesn't even 5 minutes later care, but I'm holding on to this resentment or anger or whatever the feeling is, frustration because someone's late, anger because this, the screw needs to be tightened. You're the only one you're punishing. So what's the common denominator? You. So you need to change your relationship to the outside world. Build your resiliency. Build your stress management. Give yourself some space to breathe.
I mean, you said change your relationship to the outside world, but also to your internal experience of that world.
Of the world, exactly.
Yeah, and so meditation helps you do that in a number of ways, and I can break it down a little bit further. So the first thing that meditation does is it builds the sense of metacognition, or the ability to be the observer of your own thinking and to be the observer of your own emotional process. So most of us go through life just in it. Our thoughts think themselves, our feelings happen, and we assume that that's how it's supposed to be. And when you do the simple exercise of putting your attention on your breath, your mind eventually wanders, because all our minds do. That's what minds do. And then you choose to notice that your mind has wandered. And instead of following that wandering thought like you normally would, you choose to take your mind back to your breath. That is the moment of transformation. Yep. That is the moment when you are no longer ensconced in your thoughts. You're not on the thought train. Your brain is not thinking you. You are now able to make a choice about your thinking. You've changed the relationship to your thoughts. And from that moment forward, you are able to have a process called metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking, to rise above, to see what's going on, and then to make different choices about the contents of your own mind. And when that happens, it is transformational. And the next step from that is that you often realize that all of the things that are in your mind are not actually you. Initially when we're younger, we assume that our thoughts are us and we are our thoughts, and that's just what it is. But when you take your mind off your thoughts and you realize you can have control of that content of your thoughts, then your thoughts are no longer you. You is something that is other than your thoughts. And if that's the case, then probably all the stories that your thoughts were telling you about you, built up from childhood and calcified throughout life, you can begin to realize that those too aren't necessarily true. And you can have a choice about those as well. And it becomes extraordinarily liberating.
I'm going to say this. I had this thought because I just taught a workshop for some of our high-end clients over the weekend about needs and motivation. And I got to this observer effect conversation for just a moment. I didn't say it on the workshop because it felt cheesy, but I'm going to say it here right now because it's now the second time in 2 days it's come up for me. But it's like the less sci-fi version of the Matrix that we're talking about, right? Yeah. I knew you'd get it when I said it, but it's like the whole concept of life is that you are the sum of your experiences, and you will be inevitably led down this path. And it's true until you get a moment to step back and go, hold on, I'm having an experience I don't like, or one that I do like. If it's something I don't like, what about it can I change? We're not all powerful. It's not like the Matrix. You can't just load in a program and all of a sudden be a nuclear physicist tomorrow. That's okay, but you can become a nuclear physicist if you really want to. And so how do I get to say, there are elements of this experience that I like, there are elements that I do not like. I'm going to move towards one side and move away from the other. And as you practice this in life, what you find is over time, you get more of the things you want in life and less of the things you don't want, because you've exerted control instead of just sitting in the river and letting it carry you wherever it may want to.
Yeah. And you're able to also understand how you feel about them and choose how you want to feel. So, there are two elements to what you said. One is, I want to choose what I want in life, or the direction I want to go, or the things I want to learn, or the things I want to have happen. And the other is, I want to choose how I feel in that moment about them. Yes. And as crazy as it might seem to some people, you can have complete choice about how you feel in just about every moment if you attend closely enough. Yeah. And I spend a lot of my time perfusing myself with feelings of love and feelings of joy and feelings of connection. And that's the place that I get to live in because I know how to bring them up. Exactly. And I know in any moment that's when I'm having an experience that's not serving me, how to shift my emotional state and how to shift my perspective of it to a place that will serve me. Even if the situation is not serving me, my experience of it can.
100%. Yep. This is one of the main things we talk about and come back to over and over again is the perspective and the lens that you view your own life and the experiences within it. It's everything. That right there is your freedom. That right there is your peace, is your joy, is your gratitude, is your fulfilling, beautiful life. Because no experience is inherently good or bad. And it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And if you come to it from that place and from that thank you mentality, then everything is a gift. Everything is a gift. And everything is coming from a place of love. And you have, the full right and the full ability to see it as something to be grateful for instead of something that you're a victim to.
I love that. I love the idea the world is happening for you. I've never heard that before, and I'm going to hold on to it.
Good. Yay. It's one of my favorites. It's like, just takes you out of victim. We all love to be a victim to our circumstances and on different levels, we're all kind of like, traffic, like it's all something that's happening to us. It's like, it's happening for you. Now you didn't get in that traffic accident up ahead. Like now you did, it's all working for you. It's all, there's a greater purpose. Whatever you believe in, that's bigger. It's all happening for us for the maximum learning opportunity.
And even if you don't want to put the sort of spiritual slant of a greater purpose on it, I come from a very scientific mind, even though, I run a meditation company and do all sorts of spiritual practices. I still come at it from a more materialistic perspective. And the idea of happening for you doesn't need to be the universe unfolding for you. It can just be that everything presented in front of you is something that will cause you to learn and grow.
Yes.
So, every time I have a fight with my husband, he's not the right person for me. It is, he has shown me something that I can now learn from and grow with.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
On board. So we ask all of our guests 5 questions, and we'd love to ask you just the first thing that comes to mind.
First question is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, I'm going to say that the best advice that I ever received was something that I realized myself. I don't think anybody ever told this to me. And it was that from the place of kind of privilege that I have in the Western world here, that I only want to use it to make the world better. Sorry, this is like super, super raw, and I feel silly saying it because I'm like, when you asked me the question, it's like that sort of what came up for me.
Love that.
It's the opportunity that we all have to make other people's lives better. That is our life. I guess somebody really recently asked me about my purpose, and that was what shone forward in my purpose. It's easy to feel like life doesn't have a purpose, and the easiest thing, the most obvious purpose in life is simply to make it better for the people around you and the future generations. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, absolutely nothing else, that is our purpose.
100%.
And so, if you want to put that into a business or a life context, the business advice that comes out of it is, when you have a business that is there to make other people's lives better or the world better, your business can't help but thrive, because it's solving a fundamental problem that we all believe in. And people will invariably want to support you, and people will invariably want to bring your business forward with you if it's oriented towards our human good.
So true. Next question number 2. What is your proudest moment to date?
Oh, okay. I've got a lot of them. The first proudest moment that comes to mind was my opening fashion show on Fashion Week coming down the runway. I was probably 23 years old, and like my first show had just gone down the runway, and it was, I came out actually on a conveyor belt, and it was unbelievable. I was just glowing, like beyond glowing. Having achieved, what to me was like, the biggest dream possible. And then the next proudest moment would be in Muse, getting the first piece of feedback that we did. So the product came out in 2014, early in 2014, and we got an email back from somebody who said, I just started using this. For me, this has been an absolute game changer. My family has noticed. Actually, it's not just a game changer, it's a life changer. And I cried and I cried. And that was the moment of like, okay, we've done something good.
Oh, yeah. I love those emails. They're
beautiful.
Amazing.
We live for those emails. And then what about on the flip side?
We work for those emails.
Oh, yes. We live, breathe, work.
We do what we do so that people can feel that
daily for those responses. So on the flip side of proudest, what about the most challenging or difficult moment you've been through?
For sure. There are a bunch of those.
Yeah.
So the first one that comes to mind when you say that is, I was the CEO of Muse for 7 years. I stepped down on maternity leave. But as such, I was responsible for fundraising, and at one point needed to raise, it was early, it was probably our Series A, and I needed to raise a $5 million Series A, and the money was draining out of our bank account day by day. I had 45 employees that I needed to support and needed to support their families, and I was doing the rounds, pitching, I'm a tiny little female from Toronto pitching a brain sensing headband that can help you meditate. And we'd already raised, from some pretty amazing angels. And I was just like out there pitching as much as I could. And it was the first moment I had felt in the entire experience of building Muse where I thought, maybe this is all going to fail. Oof. Everything until that point was just like, yes, 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 yes. And that was the moment where this is absolutely my responsibility. There's nobody else. I am the one raising the money. I've done like 40 pitches, and like maybe this is the moment when the business fails, when I let down 45 people, when the thing that we have, doesn't go out, and this all just goes to pot. And, I feel it so viscerally. And, see myself sitting on the couch there with such stress and just weight of this responsibility. And luckily, raised around, ultimately Ashton Kutcher came into that round, and Horizons Ventures from the Li Keqiang Foundation in China, and like Felicis from the Valley. And it became, an incredible round, and we succeeded. But it was just the darkest before the dawn.
Yeah. Wow.
I love that story. And I love that that's still the most challenging moment, even though it ended up being a really good ending to the story. I think that people forget. It's just so easy for people to forget all the struggle that one goes through and just, romanticize it and just be like, oh, overnight success. Like, I've been slaving for 10 years or whatever it is. And it's like, it takes all of that struggle, and it's still, one of your most difficult moments.
Yeah, and it could have been, if it was just me and this was going to fail, okay, that would be a crush of the ego.
Right.
But there were 45 people who were employing.
And a lot more than that,
45
all their family
families
members.
In their lives. Yeah.
I feel that pressure. And then what about self-care? What do you do for yourself in a given day to take care of yourself?
Well, meditation is obviously a go-to. And so I meditate definitely in the morning and the evening, and then multiple times throughout the day as I need to. I'm checking in on my tension and just taking little breaks and moments. I've got this process that I love lately in challenging fear. So anytime I feel fear, I lean into it to get to the freedom on the other side. Self-care is also just pure playtime with my kid. I have a 3-year-old. And so the time with him is just delight. And I try not to make it about, we have to do this, we have to sit down at the table, we have to do all these things. It's just unprotected playtime, like unimpinged playtime.
Love that.
And then of course, diet. So limited amounts of meat, tons of fish, organic foods, tons of vegetables, managing glycemic index, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Love that.
That's awesome.
And then last but not least, our podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
Living is so effing amazing. We get to be on this planet. We get to meet people and have conversations and smell things and see all of the colors in front of our eyes. There's an infinite number of souls that didn't make it to this act of living. Or, however you want to phrase it. There's so many people not alive right now, and you get to be alive right now for a finite period of time. And it is just unbelievable. And so, appreciating the act of existence and seeking to make that act meaningful for those around you is what ignites me.
I love it. Spoken like somebody who meditates a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. That's a great way to end it. Just, you're lucky to be alive. Like, you're lucky to be, here, right here and now.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for allowing me to geek out a little bit on neuroscience while we're doing the podcast. And
anytime.
And as we talked about earlier, we have a code for 15% for our amazing listeners. So if you guys want to order Muse, go on the website, use the code IGNTD, IGNTD, and you'll have an amazing way to take everything you just heard about today and put it into use with this amazing piece of technology in your own life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.